Hey everyone, welcome. Today is Monday, April 22nd, and we are doing chapter 7 of Unlearn Your Anxiety and Depression by Dr. Howard Schubiner. So, as usual, I have some slides. Have to admit, it's kind of nice doing this book where the last 6 chapters are just the same as Unlearn Your Pain. So, that's because the method is exactly the same for unlearning all of these: anxiety, depression, or chronic pain. Okay. So here we go. And a little smaller. Okay. So, oops, did I do the wrong? Okay, that says chapter 8, but this is this is chapter 7. Week 1, taking control of your life. So, an overview. This chapter goes over basically what you would do each day, and you don't have to do every single exercise or do every single meditation. You would do 2 exercises each day, such as a meditation in the morning and a writing exercise in the evening. And then do the reprogramming your brain exercises many times throughout the day, depending on your situation. We'll get into that more. But that is just kind of like an ongoing thing you can do as you're noticing your symptoms. And then find out for yourself which exercises are most helpful to you and practice them at your own pace. Don't pressure yourself to do every exercise or to recover within a certain time frame. Doing so can delay recovery. So that one is important. It's not about the more you do and the faster you do it, the faster you'll get better, because we actually want to stop that anxious, anxiety-filled living, and doing it with a lot of anxiety. That's not the method. It can take some time, and not rushing is important. But know that you will recover, relax, and proceed at your own pace. So a lot of us want to be told exactly what to do. So this program can be a little difficult for some of us who want to just be told do numbers 1 through 5 and repeat that every day. This is more about listening to yourself, determining for yourself, which exercises you want to do, which ones you don't. You get to know yourself a lot more. Okay, so this is just kind of a summary of what we know with these neural circuits causing mind body. So your brain is what is creating all of the symptoms in your body, whether it's from disease or injury or neuroplastic pain. So mind body symptoms are from neural circuits in your brain. These circuits are real and have developed because of stressful events in your life. And the often subconscious emotions, so it could be beyond our conscious control or our conscious awareness, subconscious, were generated by these events and the internal pressures you put on yourself. So stressful events, unconscious, unconscious emotions, and internal pressures are the big 3 things that cause mind-body syndrome. These circuits that have created pain and other symptoms are learned and can be unlearned. Reprogramming the brain. Of the people with chronic pain, very few people actually have an ongoing structural cause for their pain. This includes people with headaches, abdominal and pelvic pain, arm and leg pain, neck and back pain, and widespread pain syndromes, and anxiety and depression because of neural circuits. And research shows that when you change how you think or how you react to stressful situations, you're actually changing your brain and its circuits. So sometimes you'll hear people saying like rewiring the brain. You're actually changing how the brain physiologically works by changing how you think about things and how you react. And people and studies have shown that people with chronic pain and fatigue have changes that can be seen in the brain. You could see that like with depression too. In fact, someone was just telling me how he was told that his symptoms of bipolar they'd caused permanent damage in his brain. But we also know the brain is neuroplastic, and that's the old view of the brain. The new view of the brain is it's constantly changing, and it can change to show these patterns that are abnormal from all of those thoughts and emotions that keep playing on as a habit, or it can be unlearned. So learned pain is also practiced. When the pain persists for some time, it makes perfect sense that these changes will be visualized by brain imaging, right? So as neurons wire and fire together, more and more of the brain is involved when they fire. So this is just how brains change due to the environment and the activity. So it has been shown that brains also change with therapy and with the resolution of psychological symptoms, right? So just because you have a scan saying my brain has changed doesn't mean it cannot change back. So you have already taken the first step, reading. The second step, rejecting any diagnosis for symptoms actually caused by mind-body syndrome that you have been given by doctors who are unfamiliar with mind-body. So look at what you've been told. What have you been told about your anxiety or your depression? Have they been saying this is an illness or this is genetic or this is caused by the chemical imbalance? We want to examine that because current research does not show that is what causes anxiety or depression. But those can be the results of it. And it can turn on certain genes or turn them off, right? Okay, so exercises that reprogram the mind teach you to activate the conscious part of the brain to override the subconscious pathways that produce and maintain pain and mind-body syndrome. So using your conscious mind to do that, when you practice these exercises, you are changing your brain. And the more you practice, the quicker you will get better. It's kind of like playing an instrument. If all you did was go to lessons once a week versus if you practiced a few minutes a day versus if you practiced a few minutes a few times a day, right? Everyone is different, so don't worry if you don't see changes immediately. It may be necessary to repeat the following exercises for several weeks or months until your brain responds by reactivating the symptom-free circuits that are still present from the time before you had MBS. The brain will rewire itself to heal. So that can be the hardest part if you're not seeing immediate results. But please know that that is actually part of how this can happen, right? So have to go with a little bit of trust on that and try to be compassionate and patient with yourself. Many people with chronic pain or other symptoms are plagued by the concern that there's a physical cause for their symptoms. They find it hard to believe that their brain and its neural circuits could produce so much pain. But the pain that comes and goes or that moves to different places within the body is clearly caused by neural pathways. So there are ways of ruling in that it's neuroplastic that we talked about in previous chapters. But some of it is that it comes and goes. It's not consistent. It's worse in different times of the day. So look at that for your symptoms. And constant pain or other symptoms that occur consistently with certain movements or positions can also be mind-body syndrome. So you might say, well, no, mine doesn't happen when I'm stressed, but it does happen every time I go upstairs. So that must be physical, right? But the brain can learn that. It can learn that habit. Every time we go upstairs, tighten up this area and cause pain. This is true. If this is true for you, pay closer attention to see if your brain offers you some clues. So pain reprocessing therapy is PRT, that acronym. And it's a term we use for reprogramming or rewiring the neural circuits in the brain. And it was coined by Alan Gordon. He wrote The Way Out. Many of you who have found this group are in the Facebook group of Alan Gordon's Tell Me About Your Pain. So that name might be familiar to you. He and Dr. Schubiner did the Boulder back pain study along with some other people as well. And what they took was 150 people with more than 10 years of back pain. And 75% of them were pain-free in 1 month. So pretty incredible results. They were doing 2 sessions per week, but they were mainly just focusing on pain science education, teaching people things like somatic tracking, and 3/4 of them were pain-free or what they say is chronic pain-free. So an average of 0 to 1 out of 10. So there's a lot of evidence that PRT works. If you're thinking of mind-body syndrome and what could cause it or what could keep it going, number one is natural reactions to pain and other symptoms. We'll talk more about that. Ongoing emotional reactions to past and current stressful life situations. Number three, personality traits. And number four, ongoing stressful situations that need correcting or adapting to. So PRT really is just addressing the first. It's, again, knowing what pain science is and how to react to it in different ways. That alone can decrease most people's pain. But this book actually goes a lot more into number 2, 3, and 4 and changing those, how to change those. So when he is talking about those natural reactions to pain, these are the 6 F's. So insert whatever symptom that you have from anxiety or from depression, or if it is actual pain or another symptom, and think about how you might react when you feel that sensation. You might have fear. That's a very common one. Fear of the pain or other symptom. We fear the sensation of it as it can be so severe and unpleasant. We worry about whether it will go away or when it will return. We spend a lot of time wishing it will go away. You guys have that with when you have symptoms? Do you focus on the pain or other symptom? Do you pay a lot of attention to it, monitor it, focus on how it feels and if it's changing or getting worse? That actually, all of these natural reactions to pain, these 6 F's will make your pain worse. So if you're focusing on the pain, your brain feels like it's really important and actually keeps producing more of it. If you're frustrated with it, when you get upset, annoyed, and angry about the pain or other symptom, you could become resentful that doctors haven't fixed it or don't understand it, or sad for what we have lost. Again, these are normal reactions, but recognizing if you're doing them and finding ways that we can change that will help you decrease your pain faster. If you notice that you're fighting it, working really hard to overcome it, trying to push through, getting exhausted in the fight, especially when we feel we are losing the battle, trying to figure it out. So spending a lot of time thinking about it, searching for answers online in doctor's offices and with alternative care practices. You guys applying these to yourself? How many of these are you doing? Trying to fix it, spending a lot of time and money on treatments that haven't worked, trying anything and everything that might work, getting desperate for a cure, and depressed when one doesn't materialize. So these are normal reactions. They can be unlearned. This is mainly what PRT talks about, the natural reactions to pain and how to respond to it differently. These reactions, oh, there is something in the chat. Okay, there's the chat. Oh, Mary says, I see myself, but I'm also getting much better at this. Yeah, yeah. And it's not like we don't have to be, again, perfectionism. We don't have to be perfect about this. Even just identifying it is a huge step in reacting differently. So even if you can't help but be frustrated, but you could just label, oh, now I'm frustrated. Now I'm focusing on it. I'm trying to fix it. Even just labeling it and understanding that you're doing it is helpful just to do that. It changes the brain from the like primitive part of the brain to the cognitive part. And remember, that's what we want to get to is that cognitive part so we can rewire the subconscious part. So when you do the 6 F's, these reactions send feedback to the brain that yes, there's a problem, a big problem. And the feedback makes the brain continue to generate pain or other symptoms and actually makes it worse over time. And they call that the pain, fear, pain cycle. Have you guys heard of the pain, fear, pain cycle? It could be, symptoms also, right? Anxiety, fear, anxiety, whatever. Okay, so there's this little chart with this danger mechanism is like the brain and prior stress and trauma, current stressful life events, physical injury, those can all activate the danger signals. what do I say? Danger signals, danger mechanism can produce those danger signals. So when the danger signals or danger mechanism is activated, it will produce symptoms. You could think of them as chronic pain, fatigue, insomnia, anxiety, depression, other symptoms like chronic pain. And then those symptoms could lead to the 6 Fs. If those 6 Fs, if it goes from the symptoms to the 6 Fs, the danger mechanism is again amplified or activated, right? So this can just kind of go in that loop. So maybe this is helpful to see it in this way. Maybe that's more confusing, but basically reacting with the 6 Fs amplifies pain. And the danger mechanism can be sensitized to activate the danger signal by prior life stresses and traumatic life events. So someone who has gone through a lot of trauma or stress, their danger mechanism may activate with, less and less of a threat, lower and lower thresholds, right? A danger signal is like a smoke alarm, and we don't just get angry with a smoke alarm. It's just doing its job. Oh, sorry. We don't get angry. I mean, ideally we don't, right? My kids are still like, swearing every time the smoke alarm comes on, but at least we don't freak out. We don't call the fire department. We don't pack up our belongings and move out. We're like, oh, we investigate. There's a smoke alarm going off. Oh, it's just because I was cooking. Not a big deal. It's just doing its job. And with our brain, we don't know why our brain chooses to produce certain symptoms as opposed to others at a given time, nor do we know why the brain is wired to produce pain when both physical injury or emotional injury occurs, but it clearly does. So sometimes people are like, well, I don't understand why this is stressful to me, or I don't understand why the brain is producing this certain pain. We don't need to understand all of that. We don't understand exactly why that works, but we know this is how humans are wired. So think of a child lying in bed, fearful of a monster in a closet. So pretend like this is a child that you really love, and they're super afraid of a monster. Would you be angry at this child? Of course not. You'd put aside your annoyance. You'd open the closet door to show them that there's no monster there, lie down with them and calm them, soothe them with compassion and caring, and then tell them a story. So this is the way we want to react to our symptoms. Or if it was like a lost child in a grocery store, you wouldn't yell at the kid. You would say, oh, I'm so sorry. Let's find your mom. Let's help you. Like that's the kind of energy you want to respond to yourself with. Opposite of the 6 Fs, right? You will gently tell your brain that there's no tissue damage here, right? There's no illness, there's no genetic problem. You're okay. You can do this with kindness, not anger. You can thank the brain for sounding the alarm, as you know it's just trying to protect and help you. You will calm the brain by telling it there's nothing wrong physically and that you'll be able to handle the stress that's occurring or that did occur in the past. You will smile and go on with your day. So when he was saying, remember at the beginning, he's saying kind of the structure generally is 2 exercises per day, plus that reprogramming throughout the day. This is the kind of stuff he's talking about. Just sending those messages of safety back to your brain, being compassionate with yourself, knowing that this is temporary and it will go away and it will change. Okay, so exercise 1, the quiz and affirmations. Ask yourself this question: what's wrong with you? And then answer yourself, nothing is wrong. So if you're answering, oh, it's because depression runs in my family, and if I eat this certain food, I'm more likely to be depressed. It's nothing's wrong with you. Go ahead and answer this quiz with a smile, with gusto and laughter and relief, knowing that you're going to get better. You can sing this to yourself, do this in another language or in a funny accent, It may seem silly, but these are powerful ways of calming your brain. So I love that idea. I think we talked about it last week of like saying it in an accent, saying it with a funny voice, even saying it in another language if you know that. You could do it in Pig Latin or something, right? It's because these neural pathways are like habits, and we want the brain to just do some new neural pathways, new neural circuits that aren't fear and anxiety related, right? So several times a day, take this quiz. It's just one question. What's wrong with me? And then the answer, nothing. Nothing's wrong. Okay. And you may not be the point where you totally believe that. So if any of these affirmations or these things that Dr. Schubiner has you say, if they don't totally sound believable yet, you could even start with a ladder thought, like a rung on a ladder. You could think, it's possible that nothing's wrong with me. Maybe nothing's wrong with me. Maybe I'm healthy. It's possible I'm strong, right? But the more you do this work and gather evidence, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. I'm not afraid. I'm in charge. I can do what I want. I'm safe. I'm not in danger. I'll be fine. So some of these may resonate more than others. Try to pick ones that actually make you feel differently. They sound believable to you, because saying a bunch of affirmations all day long, if you don't believe them, is way less effective and helpful than even saying it's possible that this might be true for me, and you do believe that. And it will become more and more easy for your brain to find evidence of this way of thinking if you're already opening the door to it. It's possible that I'm strong. Oh, I did have that time where, I got up and walked across the room when I wasn't thinking about it. And, he gives this example of a man who has heel pain, but one night he noticed he went to the bathroom and back without pain. And he hadn't ever noticed that before. But, in the middle of the night, he just wasn't conscious about it, didn't notice it. And then he had that evidence of like, it's possible this is not structural, right? Okay, so there's this position of power. So have you heard of, I think there's a TED talk about putting your hands on your hips, the Wonder Woman or like Superman pose. And that if you sit up straight and tall or stand up straight with your legs apart and your hips, hands on your hips, that actually increases your testosterone. People who did that before a job interview performed better on their interview. So try to use any physical cues in your body to feel more powerful too. And Dr. Schubiner says, I even give you permission to use curse words as part of your affirmations. In fact, research shows that using swear words can reduce pain. So basically, they found that like if someone stubbed their toe and they swore, they had less pain than if they didn't use a curse word, unless curse words were a big normal part of their vocabulary. If they always, if every other sentence is using a curse word, then they had less effect. But when people use it in that way of like, I really mean this, I'm passionate about this, then the brain gets that message. Yeah, Mary, I love thinking of myself as Wonder Woman. That makes me smile. Yeah. And even smiling in real life, like even if you're not feeling it, but you smile, your brain creates dopamine. So some of these things, it's like using the body to prime the brain. So your goal is to reduce the fear of pain, reduce the other natural reactions, those 6 Fs, but your goal is not to reduce the pain or symptoms. Okay, so this gets a lot of people because they're like, well, I must not be doing it right because the pain didn't decrease, or, I still had some symptoms. Okay, your goal isn't to reduce the pain or the symptoms. Your goal is to decrease the fear, to calm the brain, to do that consistently. In fact, what someone was saying in that group, someone said something like, you need pain to train the brain, right? So when someone has a symptom, it's easy to be frustrated or not want it. But when you have that symptom, that's a chance to rewire your brain. If you didn't have that symptom, you couldn't rewire your brain, right? So you need the pain to train your brain. Um, that can be calming, maybe. But finding whatever is calming for you right now and then developing those skills. It is not a good idea to focus on the pain or other symptoms. Remember, that's one of the 6 F's. So, people who were instructed to keep a pain diary to monitor and track their frequency and level of pain had large increases in pain. That is research showing that when you focus on it, it gets worse. So, the more you can focus on living your life while using the affirmations above from the last slides, and less time you focus on the symptoms, the quicker you will recover, right? So, it's not like we would think with traditional kind of Western medicine. See how many symptoms you have, what helps decrease them, focusing all on those symptoms and getting them to go away. We're really just focusing on not focusing on the symptoms, living your life more, having less fear, starting to do those things again that you've been missing in your life that you've cut out because of the pain. And doing that will actually help you recover faster than focusing on the symptoms. So counterintuitive. Another way that you could talk to yourself when you have a symptom, I know what you are. Mind body syndrome, and I know you are trying to lead me to disappointment, fear, and hopelessness. However, I will not go there. I'm safe and getting better. I'm fine, and it will be fine. So, having this indifference. So, I like to think of this as like, imagine that you had a cold, but you knew that within like 3 days or so, you'd be better. So, when you have that cold, it might be frustrating and annoying that you have it. But usually, when we have that sense of it's going to go away within a certain amount of time, we can just kind of maybe pamper ourselves a little more, get a little more rest. Maybe we even get to, watch some TV shows and just relax. And when we're not so stressed out about trying to get it to go away faster than the 3 days, it just runs its course, it goes away, there's less of that stress. Maybe that doesn't feel indifferent to you. So if that example isn't exactly for you, because I know there's people with health anxiety here too, but maybe think of something you are more indifferent about. Um, Maybe it's like when your leg goes to sleep, you're not like, oh my gosh, it just ruined my day. My leg went to sleep. It's like a little more indifference. That's what we're aiming for. And I know that can seem really impossible when you have pain or when you have symptoms. How can I be indifferent? But you'll see with this work, it'll get easier and easier. So there was one client that Dr. Schubiner found that would press an imaginary delete button when she noticed the fear. So she would notice it in her body, imagine pressing delete, and this shortcut shifted her brain towards something else. Or you could treat the fear as if it were a solicitation phone call and just hang up. Okay. So, any of these little ways of visualizing it differently, it might seem kind of weird or like simplistic or something, but really, this is how we're helping rewire the brain to kind of conceive it in a whole new way, to have a new strategy, to erase or to hang up and just, tell that fear no. Another analogy I've heard that I really like is like, if you imagine someone throwing a stick to a dog, when the brain is giving you a symptom or giving you a lot of anxious thoughts, the more we're going and chasing that stick and bringing it back, then the brain just keeps throwing it. But if we can let the brain throw the stick, right, it brings up some fear and we don't respond to it, then eventually the brain stops throwing those sticks because it's not getting the reaction back. Okay, so exercise 2, mindful awareness or somatic tracking. You've probably heard that term, somatic tracking. And basically, if you think about what that is exactly, it's sitting still and observing the sensations occurring in your body from moment to moment. So it's very similar to a mindfulness meditation. And you could ask yourself, how do I feel towards this symptom or sensation? Do I fear it? Do I hate it? Am I annoyed by it, resentful of it, worried about it, feel guilty about it? And then, oops, there's a typo. Ask these feelings to step aside for a few moments. So if you notice, a lot of people do have that pain and then they get annoyed by it or they're fearful of it, and see if you can just put that aside. You want to show your brain that these sensations are not dangerous and don't need to be feared. And this process turns down the danger alarm mechanism and the fear response of the brain, which in turn reduces pain, anxiety, and other symptoms, right? So when we're not as reactive, then the brain knows that it can calm down and even stop producing that. There's a synopsis of mindful awareness. Actually, I don't know if it's on page 108. These are the slides from last time. So forgive me if that's the wrong page, but in chapter 7. And there are a lot of somatic tracking, like meditations out there. I'm pretty sure that Alan Gordon has one on his website. I have a couple on my podcast, Unstoppable Body and Mind, and you'll find some out there on YouTube. So the basic thing is, like he said, observing the symptoms, describing them with words or shapes or colors. But somatic tracking is such a helpful tool. And oh yeah, Allison, I've been having vertigo and I notice it bringing up fear because it's a new symptom. Yeah, for sure. So it's common when you're doing this work that you might have some new symptoms come up, and immediately just notice what that response is. And if it's fear, of course, that's normal. The 6 F's are natural reactions to fear, but that also gives us some information. Oh, this is how we are relating to new symptoms in our body. This is turning up the danger alarm mechanism every time I react with fear. But, the more you can just be like, oh, okay, that's interesting, or start to describe what the sensation is, or notice the times you don't have it, and have that thought of like, okay, this is temporary. This is part of that process. Those extinction bursts can be part of the process where I get a new symptom and it can go away as fast as it comes. So exercise 3, neural circuit testing. It's to learn more about how your brain may be generating symptoms and how to reverse the process. Research has shown that when someone imagines having an injury, the brain activates areas that are, areas that are identical to where there is an actual injury. So the brain can react just through imagination as it would if there was an actual injury. And so one of the ways that we can know, like distinguish, like this is like the fit criteria kind of stuff. If you notice that it's pain or symptoms that have developed with certain movements, when they visit certain places, when they're exposed to hot or cold water, certain foods or sounds or smells, those are really good indicators that this is learned pain or symptoms. If it's due to the weather, computer screens, typing, any of those, again, learned behavior. And even the weather, I know it's controversial, but Dr. Schubiner has several articles of research that weather is not related to pain, even the change in barometric pressure. So but it can be a trigger to some people whose nervous system's already on high alert, right? If the danger mechanism is already more triggered, then little things like wind or weather or foods or water or cold, little things like that don't cause other people pain can cause these people pain or symptoms. So many people react to either light or deeper touch or pressure in certain spots. Once the brain learns this neural association, it often becomes persistent and can spread over time. So this is, I love this. This is from my physical therapy continuing education training I did pretty recently. They talk actually a lot now about nervous system and this hyperreactivity of the brain and that causing symptoms. So they called it the noisy neighbor principle. Oh yeah, and Melissa says certain people, right? Like you might get a headache around a certain person, right? Um, but noticing those little types of things. So the noisy neighbor, if you think of like an apartment building where one neighbor is really noisy and then the people below, they yell up, hey, be quiet, and then that wakes up more of the neighbors and they're also yelling to be quiet, and then eventually the whole building's awake and they call the police, and um, that's the noisy neighbor principle. So thinking of pain or symptoms starting with one thing and then spreading, that's how the nervous system works. That's a good sign that it's not something structural. People who started out thinking they have an allergy to one food or chemical, and then they begin to have similar reactions to other foods, and this can spiral out of control, right? So maybe they start with like something like with me, I had a really bad reaction to broccoli, and then maybe you'd be like, oh, I can't really eat any raw vegetables, or I can't really eat any of those because it causes those same symptoms. And then when we can react to certain stimuli or situations as being safe, the brain can turn off the symptoms. We see this with massages, acupuncture, herbal products, supplements, Reiki, hot baths, or certain exercises. So the reason those things are working is not because you needed to stretch or you needed the heat to increase the blood. No, it's because the brain felt safe. I'm doing this thing that feels safe and I believe it will work. And then the brain turns off the symptoms. I even had one client that was having some bladder pain, and at the hospital, they gave her this medicine that really worked for it. So every now and then she would still have that pain, and usually it would go away. But one time she had it and she decided, I'm just going to take those pills. And she went and put them in her hand. And as soon as she just looked at them in her hand, her pain stopped. So her brain felt safe because they knew, okay, we're going to get that medicine. That's going to help. So it actually turned off the pain. So make a list of your triggers, including things such as light, sounds, smells, foods, chemicals, weather patterns, screens, typing, certain movements or positions, exercises, touch or deeper pressure, certain people, places, situations, or anything else. And it can be tricky, right? Like people might think, oh, I have carpal tunnel because every time I type, it hurts. And it turns out they're typing at work when it's a stressful situation, right? So what are your triggers for your symptoms? So step one, and this is called graded exposure. So I really love, this is a cool process. If you can find something that is a trigger, then imagine that you're doing it. Maybe you're going to the store where you think you might have anxiety, or going to the hospital for a checkup, or you are bending over where usually your back would hurt, or running, right? So imagine you're engaging in one of the triggering activities from your list, and picture yourself doing the activity or being in the situation as vividly as you can. So try to do it when you're a little bit calmer, close your eyes, get into kind of, one of those kind of tuning in states. It works better when you relax a little bit, and then imagine yourself doing that thing, walking barefoot, um, going downstairs, whatever it is. Just see what your body does. In fact, you can do that right now. Think of something, a triggering behavior. Maybe it's a conversation with someone or any of those things, something physical, a food. Just see what happens when you imagine yourself doing that thing. Do you get pain? Do you get anxiety? Do you get any muscle tension or an emotional reaction? sometimes people just get almost like an awareness. My knee doesn't really hurt, but it's like, there's a lot of focus on my knee, like waiting for something, right? So, or no reaction at all. Either way is fine. Step 2, smile, tell yourself that you're fine, healthy, strong, not in danger, safe and not afraid. Repeat the set of affirmations you've developed. Then imagine you're doing that activity again, but this time imagine you're engaged in this activity with joy and ease in your heart and in your mind. Imagine how good this will feel to engage in this activity without any fear or worry. So, Dr. Schubiner will have people like imagine that they're on a beach and the sun's on their face and the wind's in their hair as they're jogging, and they're so grateful. They're feeling happiness, or maybe they're feeling so much relief knowing that they can do this now. So you're getting into the imagination of doing it, as well as this powerful emotion of gratitude, happiness, joy, pleasure, even smiling in real life. He'll say, smile in real life as you imagine this, because you want to prime the brain that this is not dangerous. And then step 3, you would actually do the activity. So take the same attitude of fearlessness, joy, and ease, and engage in the activity in a very small way. So, maybe it wouldn't be running 3 miles, but you might just try, running a few steps one day, right? So graded exposure, we're just going to do it in a very baby step, step by step kind of way, and really prime the brain to feel safe around doing it. And it's kind of like exposure therapy, when people are afraid of snakes, and first they might touch a rubber snake, and then they might just be in the room with a snake, and then they might actually touch a snake with a glove on, it's like graded exposure. As long as you can do this activity with your affirmations, with certainty that you're fine and will be fine, and with a smile, you're training your brain out of mind-body syndrome. It doesn't matter if you get any symptoms or not. So we want to be outcome independent. That means, say I do go to play pickleball and I notice my elbow does hurt a little. It doesn't mean I've done it wrong, or it doesn't mean that, this process won't work. That's actually part of the training is just reassuring your brain that it's safe. Oh, it's okay. You were a little scared. Oh, of course, that felt like a little much, but I got you. We're safe. This can go away as fast as it came. Step 4, expose your brain to more of the trigger while continuing to remind your brain that everything's okay. Recognize that your brain may create no symptoms one day, and then for no reason at all, create increased symptoms the next day. Don't worry about that. This is in the book. If you ever forget this, so good to remind yourself your brain can create symptoms or not. Don't worry. I know it's hard to believe that, but this is a normal part of the process. So the more you're realizing that it's normal, just like you'd be like, okay, it's normal for a cold to last this amount of time. I'm not even going to freak out about it because this is a normal part of the process. And then step 5, choose another activity from your list of triggers and start to work on that in the same way. You will gradually unlearn these triggers and you'll take large steps towards recovering from MBS. You'll get there. You are going to get better. So in my a couple podcasts ago, I did an interview with one of my clients, Lucas, who's working on anxiety. And you can listen to that if you want for some ways of how that sounds when he describes the kind of work he did. And since his symptoms were just a lot of fear around, going places or interacting with people, we would do this graded motor imagery or graded exposure, helping him imagine, going to the lunch with his boss or going to the store um, and doing it with the emotion that felt good, and right. And then he would actually go and do it. Oh, these slides. That's not right. Okay. And then A good method of challenging triggers is anticipate when the trigger is likely to occur and create a set of statements to counteract the trigger. I'm healthy, I'm strong, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm not afraid, I can do this activity without pain, without fear. Even if there is some pain, I'll be okay. I'm getting better. I'm proud of doing that for myself. Obviously, you're not going to just read all of these. What speaks to you the most? What can you believe? What sounds soothing to your nervous system? I can relax with that knowledge. I don't have to worry anymore. Everything will be fine. I'm okay. There's no danger here, no worries. Do you guys want to put any of the those soothing things or these statements that you might say to yourself, if there's some that you use that we haven't shared? Oh, my podcast is called Unstoppable Body and Mind. Okay. So yeah, I always like to collect, kind of lists of what people say to themselves, how they soothe themselves. Things like this is temporary, or this is a misfiring of the brain, or this is some misinformation. When symptoms worsen, it's usually because you're afraid. So just remembering it's your brain's going to want to think it's because, well, this is really like a bad case of it. It's uncurable maybe, or like this isn't going to work for me. But those are fearful thoughts, right? Those are going to make your symptoms worse. So if you notice you're trying to expose yourself to triggers and the symptoms get worse, reduce the amount of exercise or movement or exposure to the triggering event, and then work on the fear. So it would be better to imagine yourself walking pain-free before you actually go and walk than if you were like, I'll just go and push through the pain every single day and I'll go, 1 mile more each day. No, we're talking baby steps, and you could really do yourself so much favor by just working on the fear first with this graded motor imagery before you actually go to do it in real life ever. Practice calming your mind and reminding yourself that this is MBS and that you are overcoming it. And then outcome independence is like I mentioned before. And it's you're not judging whether this is successful or not based on your symptoms. In fact, sometimes you might have a symptom and react without fear, and that's so much more powerful than not having the symptom at all, because you're actually rewiring your brain when you do that. So this is, be gentle with yourself. Outcome independence is one of the hardest things to get, but you get to the point where I was coaching someone the other day, and we were talking about something that was triggering her. And all of a sudden she said, oh, I have my leg pain. Like when you said that phrase, pain went down my leg. And she wasn't scared at all. She even laughed because she was like, holy cow, that thought, those emotions triggered that pain down my leg. And it went away and it was fine. But she was so outcome independent about it. She wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're doing something wrong. She was like, wow, holy cow, I didn't know I had that much of a reaction to this topic, right? Whole different way. And what could you say to depression? Yeah, that's a good one. Like, maybe noticing what those symptoms are. It could be a little more symptom specific, but if it's like, I like the things like this is temporary, this too shall pass. If your mind is going to some of those things like I'm never going to get better versus um, this I'm on the path to getting better. I'm learning more and more every day so I can get better. Um, but yeah, maybe if you put in there what specific things you think about the depression or what the symptoms are, then that could be a little more tailored to, counteracting those triggers. It's common for the symptoms to get worse when you begin confronting the triggers. Your mind will try to hang on to the symptoms and will try harder to scare you into turning back. Don't be fooled. This is actually a good sign. If you decide you're going to walk or exercise for just a minute or two, make that your goal and disregard whether this causes symptoms or not. So, this is like one of those nuances, right? Like here he's saying, if you make that goal for walking a minute or two and you have pain, don't worry about that pain, just keep going. He's not necessarily saying push through, right? And that's why we don't want to start with, I'll start with 10 minutes and just push through. But if you do like a reasonable amount that you're just like, okay, this is a very small amount compared to what I started with. And if I do even have a little bit of pain, that's okay. That's part of the normal process, right? So hopefully that's not too confusing of when you continue and do it and when you stop, but just think of decreasing all the fear around it first, and that'll help so much. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is good. PJ, others recommend searching for glimmers rather than triggers, glimmers of joy, positive thinking. Yes. Okay. So yeah, the triggers can help you know kind of what to anticipate and how to react to it. But this is such a good point. Just like when we're focused on pain, our brain creates more pain. If we're really focused on finding our triggers, we'll notice more triggers, right? So, in addition, you could notice glimmers. Those are the opposites of triggers, things that actually make you feel good in your body, things that feel safe. I noticed when I see a dog with its head out the window, it just like melts my heart. It just looks like they're having the best time of their life. They just look like pure joy. And it gets me out of my own head for a second when I see that, right? And I might like the feeling of clean sheets on my bed, or when I water my plants and they're looking really green and healthy. Like those are little glimmers for me. So notice what are glimmers for you, right? And don't just notice the triggers. Totally. Okay, exercise 4. Remember, he's saying like do one of these exercises per day, or one of the meditations, which are on his website. Um, so you're not doing all of this all the time. If you're getting overwhelmed, just choose one thing. Wherever you notice one of your MBS symptoms, you can stop for a moment to calm your brain. Replace the natural tendency of going into fear and worry with something like this. You can smile, take a nice slow breath, and say to yourself, that's interesting. That's my brain. This is just a sensation. It's not important and can't harm me. It will pass. I'm okay. Then take another slow breath and move on with your day. So, again, be compassionate with yourself if it doesn't look exactly like this. Some of these may seem like they should be easy and they're hard. So, be patient with yourself. If there's a lot of programming of this is dangerous, your brain isn't just going to drop that immediately and start feeling safe. No way. It's trying to protect you. It's like, no, we don't want to risk that danger of letting our guard down. We need to really keep proving to the brain that it's safe so that it relaxes. Yeah. So what he suggests is, Melissa, one exercise and one meditation per day as kind of a guideline of what to do. But at the same time, I believe it was exercise 1 that was like rewiring your brain that he says you do kind of throughout the day. So you could think of it as I'm just going to focus on doing one exercise and one meditation per day. That is a great start. And that sounds a lot more doable than trying to implement all of these every day, right? That's why we want to just simplify it and focus on one per day. And then writing exercise, about an hour a day. I think he does say like plan on about 30 minutes to 60 minutes per day, but also you could split it up where you would do like the exercise in the morning and the meditation at night or something like that. And also if you're not doing it every single day, don't get hard on yourself, because that's again when we get into that perfectionism that can really throw us off track. So that's why I like that idea of just kind of aiming small, kind of like less is more at this point. Because the main thing is decreasing your fear as much as you can decrease your fear. Um, so you could make a list of past traumatic or stressful events, include any interactions or events which caused hurt, shame, resentment, embarrassment, pain, anger, guilt, humiliation, fear, worry, or other negative emotions. Include events from your childhood as far back as you can remember, and list each event separately. So it's crazy how sometimes we forget about things. The other day, I was like wondering about why I have anxiety about cars sometimes and accidents. And then I remembered, I was like, I was in a car accident when I was 5 where the car rolled over. And I'd kind of downplayed it in my mind, like, nothing happened. I wasn't injured. But that could be why my brain still fears it, right? So just kind of keep this rolling list maybe, and you might even as you do this work be like, oh my gosh, I forgot there was this traumatic thing. Okay, so just start just kind of like opening up your mind to like these things just to show yourself, okay, no wonder my nervous system is so sweet and protecting me, right? It got really scared when I was a child. And I feel like we did these lists a little bit earlier. I think it was chapter 5. So you might have some of these lists already as we were, finding some of those like childhood events. Definitely the list of personality traits was in chapter 5. So do you have traits you could write down in a list like perfectionism, low self-esteem, high expectations of yourself, worry, fear, anger, hostility, time urgency, guilt, dependency, isolation, needing to be good or liked, being overly conscientious, being hard on yourself, like harder on yourself than other people, being overly responsible, harboring anger or resentment, not standing up for oneself and others. Pretty big list, right? So again, this is just to prove to your brain, okay, this, and to understand, even have compassion with yourself of like, this is why these symptoms are coming up. Like, of course, like these things in my childhood when I was in junior high and got bullied, then I developed low self-esteem. Of course, then, when I go in situations with new people, I might be a little more scared and reserved and create pain so I can avoid that emotional hurt again. Think of anything and everything and list each trait as a separate item, learned or developed in childhood as well as those you currently possess. So writing away your pain is another one of the exercises you could choose from. Emotional Awareness and Expression Therapy, EAET. And this is what Dr. Schubiner kind of developed from ISTDP. I can't remember what that stands for, but it's another, basically what he realized is the PRT, the pain reprocessing, pain education stuff helps with a lot of people, but also some people need to be aware of those subconscious emotions and to know how to express emotions. And that's what EAET is about. And the first week's writing exercise is this 25-minute jog. Form lists addressing stressors and personality traits. So, oh, sorry, from the lists. So you might have done those lists. You might have those lists in your head. List 2 or 3 from each of the areas you think are most likely influencing your health, right? So maybe some of them not as much as others, but you notice you're really, really, really hard on yourself. That would affect your health. So what 2 or 3 are the most prevalent for you? Okay, so you could list them like that. And then there's this clustering or webbing technique that he talks about. It's pretty cool. So choose one of those topics or issues from your lists, the past stressor, current stressor, or personality traits. Write it in the center of your oval. And this is the nucleus of your cluster. I'll just show you. Oh, I thought I had a picture of it. Oh, maybe I don't. Like I said, I did these a while ago. So write it in the center of the oval on the next page. Just like take a blank sheet of paper, write an oval in the center, and write low self-esteem, right? Something like that. Set a timer for 5 minutes and begin to free associate on the topic or issue. Open up your mind and write down whatever thought occurs to you. Write it down in a 1 to 4 word phrase, and then circle what you've written and connect it by a line to the nucleus. So it'll look like a bubble or a circle in the middle. And then whatever you write, you might write, junior high boys teased me, right? And then I would circle that and connect it down to the low self-esteem. And maybe from that, from the junior high boys teasing me, I might say like poor body image, that's what came to mind. Or I might go off of that nucleus and write something else about poor self-esteem. So it's just kind of this way, instead of just writing sentences, which is fine too in journaling, this is another way, again, to just get your mind thinking in different forms and labeling things and bringing up these emotions that are maybe even subconscious. When I did one, the first time I read Unlearn Your Pain, I did one about like some anger I'd had with kind of multi-generational stuff and the patriarchy. And I didn't realize how much anger was there. I remember thinking like, wow, that brought up so much more feeling than I even realized was there. Okay, so you have two possibilities to prompt your thinking, what you wrote in your nucleus or what you just wrote on the satellite circle and connected to it. Now write down a word or phrase that represents your next immediate idea. Circle it, connect it to the circle that prompted it. So it's just kind of like idea, 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 and you circle them and connect them. Continue this process until the timer signals your 5 minutes is up, and you'll end up with a cluster of ideas and thoughts, which may look like a web filling the page. Rewriting. Oh, actually, Mary just said, I notice if I spend some time just free writing each day and then rip it up, I will sleep better that night. I'd been waking up at 4 a.m. and start thinking about worries I didn't know I was worried about. Yeah, I love that idea. When I first got into this, I learned about Nicole Sachs from Curable and got way into the journaling. And not everyone likes journaling, and that's why there's different ideas for exercises. You don't have to just do journaling, but definitely I could feel a shift in my body, and I could even, like I was saying before, kind of come up with more awareness than if I just thought about the problem myself without journaling about it. So with this free writing or fast writing, you're not trying to be a perfectionist. You're not trying to make it legible or that anyone could ever read it. In fact, you want to write down the kind of things that you would not want anyone to ever read and maybe rip it up, like Mary was saying. So keep your hand moving, write faster than you would normally write in a reflective mood. Take dictation from your thoughts as they stream across the radar screen of your mind, right? So you're just like, he's a stupid, ugly loser. And you might be like, no, I really love that person. I don't believe why would I say that? No, none of that. You write the mean things. Like Dr. Schubiner says, it's normal for a normal human mind to have mean thoughts or even evil thoughts. So you want to just write that crap out and get it out. And don't cross out anything. Don't worry about spelling, punctuation, or grammar. Write whatever comes into your mind or comes to your hand. Allow any thoughts and any feelings to be expressed. Ooh, are we over on time already? Oh my goodness. Yeah, Mary says I like ripping it up because I can't ruminate on it and don't need to worry about someone else finding it and seeing what I was thinking. Yeah, I used to always rip them up too. Sometimes I'd put some in one garbage can and some in another because I was so paranoid of like, what if someone like actually like found out what a bad person I am, right? Even though I didn't really think that, right? But that's how these thoughts feel. And that's why we can have those subconscious emotions, is because we have these subconscious thoughts that we don't want to recognize. So this stuff just gets it out. Let's see. Oh, you guys, I'm just going to keep going. If you need to leave, you can. Sorry about that. I was not watching the time. Here I was thinking we would have some time to practice things. But you guys, I have some really cool examples of that graded exposure in the Tell Me About Your Pain Facebook group. I did a graded exposure workshop you can look up. And I think on my website too, I have a really cool demo of graded exposure. where you can see someone actually like walk without pain after just a few minutes of doing this. Don't make your pain, anxiety, or depression the primary focus of your writing. That can reinforce those symptoms. Don't express resentment, anger, guilt, or shame towards yourself. These can lead to increased pain, anxiety, and depression. Instead, direct resentments or anger towards someone or some entity that you feel upset at. So it actually is better, even though it sounds weird, to like find something to be mad at or blame someone else, or, just get any of that anger out from anything you might feel other than the anger at yourself. For 10 minutes, my feelings about me and blank include, and you could have that as a prompt. And you could say that I realize, or I see that, or I hope that, or I need to. So these are just, how you might understand that symptom. I've learned that when I have anxiety, it's a sign to slow down, right? What you've learned, what actions you will take to protect yourself, be assertive regarding your needs, and connect to those you choose to love and befriend. When you start to realize you have some needs, you'll want to address them rather than, doing all these things to try to solve your symptom. Don't worry if your symptoms either improve or worsen by doing the writing. That shows that these symptoms are truly caused by MBS. On the following pages, complete your 25-minute jogs for the first week. Okay, there's that one with the circle. And then the meditations for week 1, there's that mindfulness meditation and unlearnyourpain.com. And he has the password for the meditations in the book, if you bought it. I fully and completely accept myself and my body could be something that you say, or it's possible that I can fully and completely accept myself and my body. During your day, use these techniques of like the mindfulness, just taking a few moments to focus on your breathing and that these are just thoughts or just pain. Oh, okay. I guess that's it. Okay. Wasn't sure how long we had. Okay. You guys, thanks for sticking with me, those of you who did. And yeah, thank you for joining. I guess we don't have a lot of time for questions, but you guys can always pop things in that Facebook group if you have questions, or you can even email me if you have questions about your situation. All right, you guys, take care. We will do chapter 8 next week, and we'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye.